Good evening. Tonight, we bring you a story that's not just about economics or politics. It's about the everyday lives of millions of Americans and the ripple effects felt around the globe. We examine how a trade war, launched with the intention of reviving American jobs and industries, is now sending shockwaves through the world's largest retailer, Walmart, and ultimately through your wallet and household budget. For decades, Walmart has been synonymous with always low prices, building its retail empire on a vast, intricate global supply chain. Much of that supply chain is deeply connected to factories and suppliers in China, making Walmart a symbol of globalization's reach. But when sweeping tariffs were imposed on Chinese goods, that promise of low prices was suddenly put to the test. Shelves emptied, costs soared, and the impact was felt not just in boardrooms, but in every aisle and checkout lane. The fallout from these policies reveals just how interconnected our world has become. Decisions made in Washington and Beijing can quickly affect prices, jobs, and livelihoods in towns across America. Sometimes, policies meant to protect can have unexpected, even painful consequences. In this episode, we'll explore the history of Walmart's rise, the trade policies that shaped its growth, and the real-world effects these decisions have on everyday shoppers and employees who depend on affordable goods and steady work. What happens at Walmart doesn't just stay in the store. It ripples through small towns, influences international relations, and shapes the future of American commerce and global trade. So, did the tariff strategy backfire? Instead of sparking a manufacturing boom, we now see corporations like Walmart struggling with billions in new costs that are inevitably passed on to you, the consumer, in the form of higher prices and fewer choices. Join us as we uncover the far-reaching, often unintended consequences of one of America's boldest economic experiments and discover what it means for the future of shopping, jobs, and the global economy. To truly understand the roots of today's trade crisis, we need to look back through the centuries, tracing the evolution of American trade policy from its earliest days. The story of American trade is woven into the fabric of the nation's history, shaping its economy, politics, and society in profound ways. Tariffs have played a central role since America's founding, first serving as a crucial source of government revenue, and later as a protective shield for the nation's fledgling industries. These tariffs helped American businesses grow, but also sparked fierce debates about the balance between protectionism and free markets. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff of 1930 stands as a cautionary tale. Intended to protect American jobs during tough times, it instead triggered a wave of global retaliation. International trade collapsed, deepening the Great Depression and leaving millions out of work. The lesson was clear. Trade barriers can have unintended, devastating consequences. In the aftermath of World War II, the United States led a dramatic shift toward free trade, helping to create institutions like the GATT and later the World Trade Organization. These efforts fueled decades of globalization, opening markets and connecting economies around the world. This new era brought lower prices for consumers and record profits for many companies. But it also had a darker side. American manufacturing was hollowed out as factories closed and jobs moved overseas, especially to rapidly growing economies like China. Entire communities were left struggling to adapt. Economic anxiety and frustration grew in the towns and cities left behind. For many families, the promise of prosperity faded, replaced by a sense of loss and anger. The feeling that the system was rigged against ordinary Americans began to take hold, fueling resentment and division. This widespread discontent set the stage for a dramatic reversal in U.S. trade policy. Politicians from both parties began to question the benefits of globalization, promising to bring jobs back and protect American workers. The optimism of the global era faded for many, replaced by calls for protection, new tariffs, and a demand for change. The debate over trade became a central issue in American politics, sparking protests and passionate arguments across the country. And that's how we arrived at the front lines of today's trade war, a conflict that continues to shape the American economy and the lives of millions every single day. Enter Donald Trump, campaigning on America First. He blamed China for lost jobs and promised tough action, imposing tariffs to force change. Starting in 2018, tariffs hit everything from steel to toys, targeting hundreds of billions in Chinese imports. The goal: make Chinese goods pricier, push companies to buy American, and pressure Beijing into a better deal. Supporters saw this as a long overdue fight for US workers. But critics warned modern supply chains are too complex to untangle overnight. Walmart couldn't just switch suppliers. Costs would hit American importers and, ultimately, consumers. The risk? Higher prices, inflation, and no guarantee of new US jobs. The administration insisted trade wars were easy to win. Reality would soon prove more complicated. By August 2025, the warnings had come true. Walmart, America's retail giant, faced billions in new import taxes as tariffs expanded. At first, Walmart tried to shield customers, negotiating with suppliers, cutting margins, but the costs were too great to absorb. Over $10 billion in extra duties forced Walmart to rethink its entire supply chain. Shifting production to Vietnam or Mexico proved slow and costly. China's scale couldn't be replaced overnight. The result? Higher prices for everyday goods, from microwaves to t-shirts. Walmart's always low prices promise was under siege. The impact rippled through millions of American households. The trade war's cost was now visible on every receipt. The trade war's effects are felt in every Walmart aisle. For families on tight budgets, even small price hikes matter. Since 2018, microwaves are up 18%, furniture 15%, and clothing over 10%. Shoppers across the country voice frustration. Everything's more expensive. I have to watch every item. A retired worker notes, "Tariffs were supposed to help us, but my pension doesn't go as far." The narrative that China pays has vanished. American consumers are footing the bill. The disconnect between policy promises and reality is stark. Instead of helping, tariffs have squeezed those least able to absorb higher costs. Walmart's core customers, working families, are hit hardest. The checkout line has become the front line of the trade war. The tariffs' impact goes far beyond Walmart. Hopes for a manufacturing revival fizzled. Most companies just shifted sourcing to other low-cost countries. China retaliated, slamming US farmers as exports dried up and prices crashed. Billions in federal aid were needed to keep farms afloat. Business investment slowed as companies faced constant uncertainty. The unpredictable trade environment stifled growth and planning. Studies show the full cost of tariffs landed on US consumers and businesses, not China. The promised benefits never materialized, only higher prices and economic pain. The gamble left the economy weaker, not stronger. The economic fallout quickly became political. Republicans are divided. Some defend the tariffs, others decry the damage to farmers and consumers. Democrats call it a Walmart tax, blaming Republicans for rising prices, but their own party is split on trade. Internationally, America's go-it-alone approach strained alliances and weakened efforts to confront China together. Rebuilding trust with allies is now a top challenge. As elections loom, trade remains a central, divisive issue. The debate has shifted. It's not just free trade versus protectionism, but how to compete with China and support US workers. There are no easy answers, just hard lessons. The party with a credible plan will shape America's future. Why did the policy backfire? To understand the backlash, we need to look beyond the headlines and dig into the mechanics of how these decisions ripple through the economy. Experts point to a basic misunderstanding of global supply chains. In today's interconnected world, products cross borders multiple times before reaching store shelves, making it nearly impossible to isolate one country from the rest without consequences. Tariffs are paid by US importers, not China, and those costs are passed to consumers. This means everyday Americans feel the pinch at the checkout line as prices for essentials quietly climb higher. Decades of globalization hollowed out US manufacturing. Rebuilding takes years, not tariffs. The promise of quick fixes ignores the reality that supply chains and skilled labor can't be restored overnight. The US acted alone, losing leverage with allies who preferred a united front against China. This isolation weakened America's negotiating power and left it vulnerable on the world stage. China used the moment to claim the mantle of free trade, while America looked isolated. As the US retreated, China stepped forward, reshaping global perceptions and alliances in its favor. The policy's political appeal outweighed its economic logic. Leaders found it easier to sell tough rhetoric than to explain complex trade realities, prioritizing short-term popularity over long-term prosperity. The "tough on China" message rallied a base, but the real losers, consumers and farmers, were far more numerous. While some cheered, many more quietly struggled with higher costs and shrinking markets. The backlash at Walmart is the result of policy built on shaky ground. When the foundation is weak, even the strongest slogans can't prevent real-world fallout. Economic pain spread wider than any political gain. Families, small businesses, and entire communities bore the brunt, facing uncertainty and hardship that slogans alone can't fix. The lesson: sound trade policy needs more than slogans. It demands careful planning, collaboration, and a willingness to face hard truths, not just easy applause. We've traced the journey from bold promises to painful realities. The tariffs didn't revive manufacturing or make China pay. They made life more expensive for Americans. Walmart's struggle is a microcosm of the broader economic fallout. The challenge now: craft a trade strategy that's tough, smart, and doesn't punish American families. That means moving beyond blunt tariffs to strategic, multilateral solutions. Honest assessment and evidence-based policy are essential. The debate isn't over. America's role in the global economy is at stake. Stay informed, stay engaged. These decisions shape your future. Thank you for joining us. Good night.